I'm just trying to decide if I'm comfortable even talking about that.
This one's wife. Harry wants reconciliation, so what's stopping him? Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. More noises about reconciliation. Is there substance to this, or is it just noises being made by the Sussex camp in order to try and elicit some form of response? Well, let's find out more. Richard Eden writes for the Daily Mail by explaining California has many charms, but the year-round sun of the Golden State may be starting to lose its shine for the Duke of Sussex as he sees photographs of the Prince and Princess of Wales enjoying their holiday with King Charles and Queen Camilla at Balmoral. Pausing there, undoubtedly, Harry will feel, irrespective of his defiance and resentment, an element of a pang of missing out. It will remind him of being at Balmoral when he was younger. It will remind him of the relationships that have become damaged. Not that he will necessarily think long and hard about who has damaged them, but it will cause a pang of regret for him, for he is capable of regret. The article continues by explaining in more harmonious times for the royal family, Prince Harry would have been with his brother and sister-in-law at the Highlands retreat at this time of year. To me, Balmoral was simply paradise, Harry wrote in his memoirs Spare, a cross between Disney World and some sacred druid grove. An interesting description, but that's the way he describes it. Instead of shooting grouse with King Charles or stalking deer with Prince William in Scotland, however, Harry is stuck in Monty Shitshow, plotting his next moves with his wife, the Duchess of Sussex. When the royals are on holiday in August, it seems that Harry and this one's wife get to work. Recently, on a quasi-royal tour of Colombia at the invitation of a vice president who'd seen them on Netflix. This week, announcing plans to attend Climate Week events in New York next month and informing the world of the publication date for the paperback edition of Spare. It will come out in October, says the press release from publisher Penguin Random House, which includes a detail that will come as a relief to the royal family. This is that the new, cheaper edition will not feature any fresh material. Which is a surprise because most publishers of a record-breaking book like Spare would want an updated chapter with new revelations in order to get a second bite of the cherry and boost sales. In another piece of good news for the king, Eden reveals that Harry was not planning to give any interviews to publicise the launch. This is significant. It wasn't just the contents of Spare that caused such anguish when the book was published in January last year. It was the succession of interviews that Harry gave to publicise his memoirs. With one interviewer, Stephen Colbert, he talked about his frost-bitten penis. With another, Tom Bradby, he lamented the king's failings as a father and how the monarchy had gone to bed with the devil by collaborating with the dreaded press. Harry is not giving interviews this time around, and this is further evidence of what royal sources have been telling me for some time, that he is increasingly desperate for a reconciliation with his father, as well as with the wider royal family. There is no doubt that Harry wants to patch things up with the king, one source said. His father's cancer treatment has given things an added sense of urgency. It's safe to assume that this is the main reason Harry won't be updating his tawdry memoirs with new comments about his relations. It's also why he won't be trying to sell more copies of Spare with appearances on chat show sofas. So for once, Ginger Bollocks is showing a degree of sense, of the self-serving, that he doesn't want to put the kibosh on a potential reconciliation by virtue of incurring the king and other members of the royal family's irritation and anger by kicking the hornet's nest, by suggesting more salacious details in the paperback edition of Spare. But will it work? It may encourage the king to start taking Harry's calls again, but there needs to be an awful lot more water under the bridge before William would even be prepared to consider a reconciliation. Thus it would appear, based upon what Richard Eden writes, that Harry is honestly and legitimately wanting a reconciliation. Now, you may ask yourself, what are his motivations for doing so? Is it because he sees that his father is unwell and he doesn't want to be estranged from him whilst he is unwell? That he doesn't want a situation of his father dying whilst they're estranged? Quite possibly. Is it the case that he misses the relationship that he had with his family and he wants to get that back? Quite possibly. Is it the case that he feels some guilt for the way that he's behaved and he wants to make amends for that? Quite possibly. Could it be that he wants to see them again to get more material which could then be used for the purpose of monetization? Possibly. Could it be that he wants to get back in Parr's good books because he's after more money and a new role within the royal family? Possibly. You will have your own views as to what might be motivating Harry, but the fact is that if Mr. Eden is correct, he wants a reconciliation, and he's desperate to get it. Thus, what's stopping him from doing so? What's stopping him from making repeated attempts to engage with the royal family and say, look, let's put things to one side? Well, there are a number of factors. First, of course, there is the obstinate nature of the king, whereby Harry's behaviour has meant that he's painted black. And as a consequence of such behaviour, that means that any approach that comes from Harry is simply seen through the lens of being painted black, and he's that irritating boy. It doesn't matter whether Charles' view is right or wrong about painting him black. The fact is, he is painted black. And that means, because of his own need for control, that when Harry pops up, he's seen as an irritant, a pain in the arse, and the king is reminded of his past transgressions, which results in him not taking calls and not wanting to have anything to do with him. This, of course, proves quite a barrier for Harry, though that can, of course, shift as a consequence of his status changing, which could arise as a consequence of changes within the king's own fuel matrix. Another obstacle, of course, is this one's wife. She still controls Harry, and he still allows himself to be controlled, although the extent of that control is weakening. The fact is, she is repeatedly banged on about wanting an apology, and Harry will find himself in a position that many victims of narcissists do, being caught between the person that he loves and the family that he loves, whereby any attempt to go cap in hand to the royal family would be seen by this one's wife as a traitorous act by Harry towards her. It would mean that she would see him as not being faithful to her because he has gone to them, and that, of course, threatens her need for control. This means that her own narcissism says to Harry, I'm not allowing you to do that. They're the ones that have caused the problem. Remember what they said about me, how they treated me. If you go to them seeking reconciliation, you're condoning the way that they treated me. I cannot have that. Harry finds himself stuck between a rock and a hard place. He wants to reconcile with his family, but his wife basically chews his ear about doing so. She won't show any compromise unless, of course, there is something in it for her. But ordinarily, with regard to the battle of control, Harry finds himself stuck between those two difficult positions, feeling the need to reconcile with his father, but with a wife that would regard it as a betrayal by him. And this is a common situation that intimate partner primary source victims find themselves in relation to narcissists. Often they will ultimately recognise that the narcissist is the one that's causing the problem, their spouse, and that they should reconcile matters with their family. Often, as they start to see things more clearly, perhaps the fog of emotional thinking lifting, that they realise, actually, it's my spouse that's the problem. My family were innocent victims in all of this. In actual fact, I need to make my peace. I need to reconcile with them. But of course, that threatens the status and need for control of the narcissist. And thus the narcissist says, if you do that, it's over. Or if you do that, there'll be hell to play. There'll be utilisation of threat in order to prevent Harry from taking that step. What this one's wife wants, of course, is for the royal family to come crawling to them, saying, we're ever so sorry the way we treated you both, and in particular you, this one's wife. And that's simply not going to happen. It's not going to happen because of King Charles's need for control. It's not going to happen because William simply will not countenance it as a consequence of the treatment of his wife and the family at large. Thus, for all of the fact that Prince Harry wants a reconciliation, whether it's actually going to happen seems very much far removed at this juncture. And to understand why that is, once again, Understanding Narcissism provides you with the answer. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.